All right, as we look at your turn problems, we're going to try and do these together and see how you're understanding these. So for number one, we have 3x over x plus 7 plus 4 over x plus 7. So in this case, what do you think our common denominator is? So yeah, we already have the common denominator. Our common denominator in this case is x plus 7. And we already have that. Each of our fractions have the denominator of x plus 7 in it. So now that we have that, we can make this into one fraction. So remember, our common denominator goes on the bottom. And on the top, we're just writing what we have. So 3x plus 4. From there, we look to simplify the top. Can we do anything on the top? So right now, we're actually finished. We can't factor this. There's no like terms. There's nothing to factor. So we're actually finished in this one. The only other thing we need to do is state our restriction. So what would our restriction be? X cannot equal and -7, because -7 plus 7 equals 0. And remember, 0 can never be in the denominator of a fraction. So that one was pretty straightforward because we already had the common denominator. If we look at number 2, again, what's our common denominator going to be? So our first fraction has x plus 2 and x minus 5, so those have to be factors in our common denominator. The second fraction also has x plus 2 and x minus 5, which also is the same thing. So again, our denominators are already the same. So our common denominator is x plus 2 times x minus 5, so we don't have to multiply any missing fractions by any missing factors. So again, we're going to put our common denominator on the bottom. On the top, we have 4x, we have a minus. Anytime we say we use subtraction, we're going to use brackets. So I'm just subtracting x in this case. So I'm distributing that negative sign through, so I'm going to end up with 4x minus x, which is 3x after we combine like terms. There's nothing else I can combine here. So I put my common denominator back on the bottom. And we are finished. Just have to do our restriction. So what's our restrictions going to be? X cannot equal -2 and 5. Again, for number 3, we already have our common denominator. It's going to be 2x plus 3. So that means we don't have to multiply top and bottom of any fraction by anything because we already have our common denominator. So we put that on the bottom. On the top, I have 8x plus 3 minus, and then again, we have to use brackets. 2x minus 6. Now this is where we're going to have to simplify a little bit further. So I cover the bottom. Going back to our steps here, we're going to distribute or FOIL, combine like terms, and then factor. So in this case, I have to distribute a negative sign through. So I'm going to have 8x plus 3 minus 2x and then plus 6. A negative times a negative is positive. We combine our like terms. 8x minus 2x is 6x. 3 plus 6 is 9. And then I look to factor. What can I factor in this particular problem? In this case, I have a GCF, and the GCF is going to be 3. So the top is going to factor as 3 in front. And when I divide each term by 3, 6x divided by 3 is 2x. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Then on the bottom, I still have that common denominator of 2x plus 3. And now is the case where we can factor, or we can cancel out factors. So there's multiplication here. 2x plus 3 is a factor. So therefore, I can cancel out the 2x plus 3's. So we're left with the final answer of 3. We had to do our restriction. Whenever you have a coefficient in front of the x, the restrictions get a little tricky. So I have to subtract 3. And then divide by 2. So negative 3/2 is what x cannot equal. All right, so those are the problems that involve common denominators that we already have. For number 4, we don't have a common denominator yet because this first fraction is the denominator of x plus 3. This already has an x. Okay. And so remember, each of these are individual factors. I can't like break the plus 3 up out of there or anything. So remember what we said, each factor must be represented. So the first fraction has the factor of x plus 3. So that must be in our common denominator. The second fraction has a denominator of just x, which also must be represented. So we have two separate factors as part of our common denominator, x plus 3 and x. So we know our common denominator. Then it says we multiply the top and bottom of each fraction by the missing factor. So for number 4, it has the x plus 3, but it is missing which factor? We're missing the x, so we multiply top and bottom by x. For the second fraction, it has the x, but it's missing the x plus 3, so we multiply top and bottom by x plus 3. So now that we have that, we put our common denominator on the bottom. On the top, I have x times x, which is x squared, minus, so I have to use brackets, and then 3 times x plus 3, the quantity of x plus 3. So again, we're going back to these simplifying steps now. Distribute and FOIL, combine like terms, factor. So first thing I'm going to do is inside the parentheses, I'm going to distribute the 3. So I get x squared minus 3x, minus in the quantity still. I'm going to rewrite this. Oops. So minus, and then inside the bracket still, I'm going to just distribute the 3. So 3x plus 9, because I just distributed that 3 through. Now I got to go and distribute the negative sign. So I'd have x squared minus 3x minus 9. And in this case, I want to look to factor. But if I'm doing SAM factoring, which is my only option here, there's no GCF and there's 3 terms with 1 in front. There's nothing that multiplies to 9 and adds to negative 3. So the top is not factorable, which is okay. So I'm just going to keep that common denominator, that numerator the same for now. X squared minus 3x minus 9. And put our common denominator back on the bottom. And then we're going to be finished once we do our restriction. In this case, our restrictions are 0 and negative 3. Because if I put 0 in here, 0 times anything is 0, and then negative 3 plus 3 is 0. 0 times anything is 0. Look at number 5. What is our common denominator going to be for number 5. So although these are close, they are two different factors. The first one is x minus 3. So that factor has to be included. The second one is x plus 3. So they are two different factors. So we have to have both of them in our common denominator. So the first fraction has the x minus 3. It's missing the x plus 3. So I'm going to write this as multiply top and bottom of the first fraction by x plus 3. The second fraction has the x plus 3. It's missing the x minus 3. So we are multiplying top and bottom by x minus 3. Once we have that, we make our common denominator, put that on the bottom. And so I'd have 6 So 6 times x plus 3 plus 2 times x minus 3. All right, again, this is where people want to cancel. We cannot cancel because of this plus sign. So I can't do that. Again, go back to your steps here. We cannot cancel right now. We have to distribute, FOIL, combine like terms, factor. So I have to distribute the 6 through and distribute the 2 through. So I have 6x plus 18 plus 2x minus 6. Going to combine like terms. 6x plus 2x is 8x. 18 minus 6 is 12. And then we want to look to factor. So when I look to factor here, first thing I look for is a GCF. What is our GCF here? 4. So I put my 4 in front. Oops. And then I divide each term by 4. So 8x divided by 4 is 2x. 12 divided by 4 is 3. I put our common denominator back on the bottom. And again, we don't get anything to cancel, and that's okay. So we get x cannot equal -3 or 3. All right, the last one's a little tricky because we have trinomials on the bottom, which means we need to factor these first. Factor our denominators first to help us try and see what factors we have in our denominators. So I'm going to SAM factor each of these bottoms first. So x times x gives me the x squared. What multiplies to -3 adds to -2 will be 3 and 1. And it adds to be negative, so we have to have -3, positive 1. So I'm no longer looking at that bottom. That's going to be my factored denominator. Then we have x and x. What multiplies to -2 adds to -1 would be 2 and 1. And it adds to be negative, so our larger number has to be negative. So those are the two. We have two factors in the first fraction, two factors in the second fraction. So when we make our common denominator, again, every factor needs to be included. So the first fraction has x minus 3 and x plus 1. Its second fraction has x minus 2, which we don't have yet in our common denominator. So we have to have x minus 2 in our common denominator. It also has an x plus 1. Now, we already have an x plus 1 in there, so we don't have to add an additional one. So we have 3 factors in our common denominator for this particular problem. So now that we have that, again, we multiply by the missing factor. So the first fraction has x minus 3 and x plus 1. It's missing x minus 2. So I'm multiplying top and bottom of the first fraction by x minus 2. The second one has the x minus 2 and the x plus 1. It's missing the x minus 3. So we multiply top and bottom by x minus 3. So we put our entire common denominator on the bottom. And I'm going to have on the top x minus 2 times 7x minus 1. So notice how I put both those in parentheses. They're each binomial is 2 terms times 2 terms, so they're each in parentheses. I have minus sign, so we need to use brackets, and then I have 6x times x minus 3. All right, so going back here, remember I can't cancel anything right now because of this minus sign. So we have to simplify, which means distribute and FOIL first. So for this particular problem, we're going to have to FOIL the first part because it's a binomial times a binomial. So I'm doing x times 7x, which is 7x squared. X times negative 1 is negative 1x. Negative 2 times 7x is negative 14x. And then negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. I have my minus sign. I'm going to start my bracket again. And within those brackets, I have to distribute the 6x. So 6x times x is 6x squared. And 6x times negative 3 is negative 18x. From here, I'll combine my like terms out here. So 7x squared minus 15x plus 2. But now I have to distribute this negative sign through. So we'd have minus 6x squared plus 18x. We'll combine our like terms now. 7x squared minus 6x squared is just 1x squared. Negative 15x plus 18x is positive 3x. And then we have just a plain old 2 here. All right, so now I combine my like terms. So what's our next step that we have to do? Looking back on those previous steps, we already distributed and FOILed. We combined like terms. Now we have to factor that. And so we're going to factor that with our good old friend Sam. So we're saying what multiplies to 2 and adds to 3. That would be 2 and 1. Both positive. We're totally simplified now in our numerator. So we put our common denominator back on the bottom. So again, we have x minus 3, x plus 1, and x minus 2 as our common denominator. So now that we're separated everything by multiplication, we can look to cancel out. And in this case, the x plus 1s can cancel. So we are left with x plus 2 on top. And on the bottom, x minus 3, x minus 2. And then we would say x cannot equal 3 or 2. So there's a good amount of examples. You can look back at these anytime you need to. I hope you are understanding this. It's a tough situation. It's tough problems. If you have trouble, please reach out.